The gymnasium lights flickered as the microphone squealed, and for a moment the entire room buzzed with restless chatter. Then a thin, trembling voice broke through the noise, not singing yet, just whispering to herself, "Please, just let this be enough." 14-year-old Amara Lewis stood alone on the stage, hands shaking, heart pounding so loudly she was sure the judges could hear it. She wasn't here for applause. She wasn't here for dreams of fame. She was here because her mother was lying in a hospital bed, and time was running out. Amara had learned early that life didn't wait for children to grow up. Her mother, Denise, worked double shifts as a home health aide, coming home with swollen feet and tired eyes but still managing to smile as she cooked dinner and helped Amara with homework. Music was their escape. When the world felt too heavy, Denise would hum old soul songs while washing dishes, and Amara would sing along, her young voice filling the small apartment with warmth. Those moments felt like safety. Then Denise collapsed at work. The diagnosis came quickly and cruelly. A serious heart condition. Surgery was necessary, urgent, and expensive. Even with insurance, the bills stacked up like walls closing in. Amara watched her mother sign paperwork with shaky hands, pretending not to be scared. At night, Amara cried quietly into her pillow, afraid that if she cried too loudly, the fear would become real. The talent show flyer appeared on the school bulletin board 2 weeks later. First prize, a $5,000 scholarship. Second prize, $3,000. Even third place could help. Amara stared at the paper for a long time, reading the words over and over until hope flickered to life. She had never sung on a stage before. She sang in the kitchen, in the shower, sometimes softly at church. But this was different. This was a chance. When she told her mother, Denise tried to protest. She said Amara was too young to carry that kind of burden. She said money would work itself out. But Amara had already made up her mind. For once, she wanted to be the strong one. The weeks leading up to the show were some of the hardest of her life. School during the day. Hospital visits in the afternoon. Practice late into the night, singing quietly so she wouldn't disturb the neighbors. Her voice cracked sometimes, not from lack of talent, but from exhaustion and fear. Kids at school whispered when they heard she had signed up. Some laughed. Some said talent shows were rigged. One boy told her judges never picked kids like her. Amara kept going anyway. What she didn't know was that one of the judges had his own reasons for being there that night. Marcus Reed sat stiffly behind the long table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. A respected music producer, known for being brutally honest, Marcus had agreed to judge the event at the last minute. To everyone else, he was just another professional face. No one knew the truth sitting heavy in his chest. Years ago, Marcus had walked away from Denise and the baby she was carrying. Fear, ambition, and immaturity had driven him to choose his career over responsibility. He sent money for a while, then stopped. He told himself Denise would be better off without him. He told himself the child wouldn't remember. Over time, guilt hardened into silence. He had never seen his daughter. When Amara walked onto the stage, Marcus barely glanced up. Another kid, he thought. Another hopeful voice. But when she said her name into the microphone, something inside him shifted. Lewis. Denise Lewis. The name echoed like a distant bell. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing, heart beating faster. The music began softly. Amara closed her eyes and sang. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried raw honesty, every note wrapped in pain, love, and longing. She sang about holding on when the world feels unfair. About a child wishing she could heal her mother with nothing but a song. The audience fell silent, pulled into her story without realizing it was real. Marcus felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. The tone of her voice, the phrasing, the way she leaned into certain notes, it was his voice. Denise's warmth. A mirror of everything he had abandoned. His hands began to shake as memories flooded back. Late-night arguments. A woman crying, asking him to stay. A promise he never kept. When Amara reached the final note, it cracked, not from weakness, but from emotion. Tears streamed down her face as the room exploded into applause. People stood. Some wiped their eyes. Teachers hugged students. For a moment, Amara just stood there, stunned, wondering if she had done enough. Marcus couldn't stand. As the applause faded, the host announced a short break before results. Backstage, Amara sat alone on a folding chair, replaying every note in her head, convinced she had failed. She thought about her mother's tired smile, the beeping machines in the hospital room, and felt her chest tighten. Then a shadow fell across the floor. She looked up to see Marcus standing there, eyes red, voice unsteady as he said her name. Amara. She didn't know him. But something about his face made her heart beat faster. He asked about her song, about why she chose it. She told him the truth. Every word. Her mother's illness. The surgery. The fear of losing the only person who had ever stayed. Marcus broke down. Right there, in a quiet hallway behind a school gym, he confessed everything. Who he was. Who her mother was to him. Who she was to him. The words felt unreal, like a story meant for someone else. Amara listened, frozen, as anger, confusion, and disbelief crashed together inside her. You don't get to just show up, she said through tears. You don't get to care now. Marcus nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He only said he was sorry, more sincerely than he had ever said anything in his life. When the judges returned to the stage, the decision was unanimous. Amara won first place. The crowd cheered as she accepted the check, hands shaking again, this time with relief. But the biggest moment came afterward, when Marcus stepped forward and spoke into the microphone, voice breaking as he announced he would personally cover every remaining medical expense for Denise's surgery. Gasps rippled through the room. Amara didn't know how to feel. Gratitude mixed with pain. Hope tangled with old wounds. Healing, she realized, wasn't instant. It was a process. Denise's surgery was a success. Recovery was slow, but each day brought strength back into her body and light back into her smile. Marcus stayed involved, carefully, respectfully, never pushing, earning trust step by step. Amara didn't forgive him all at once. But she allowed him to be present. Months later, Amara sang again, this time at a small community concert. Her mother sat in the front row, healthy and glowing. Marcus sat a few seats behind, not as a judge, not as a stranger, but as a man trying to become a father. When Amara finished, she smiled, not because the applause was loud, but because her voice had carried her through pain into something brighter. And the lesson stayed with everyone who heard her story. Sometimes courage comes from children. Sometimes healing begins with truth. And sometimes, even the deepest broken bonds can find a new beginning through love, honesty, and a song sung from the heart. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and quiet prayers. Machines hummed softly beside Denise's bed, their steady rhythm reminding Amara that her mother was still here, still fighting. Sunlight slipped through the narrow window, landing on the blanket that covered Denise's thin frame. Amara sat beside her, holding her hand, afraid that if she let go even for a second, something terrible might happen. Denise opened her eyes slowly and smiled. It was weak, but it was real. You sang, she whispered. Amara swallowed hard. You heard. Everyone heard, Denise said. Tears welled up in her eyes. The nurses played it on their phones. They said my daughter stopped a whole room with her voice. Amara tried to smile, but her heart was heavy. There was so much her mother didn't know yet. So much had changed in one night. The money, the judge, the truth that felt too big to fit inside her chest. She rested her forehead against her mother's hand and breathed in deeply. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood outside the room, staring at the door like it might bite him if he stepped closer. He had faced sold-out arenas and ruthless executives without flinching, but this terrified him. Inside that room was the woman he once loved and the daughter he had failed before even knowing her. When he finally knocked, Denise looked up and froze. Time seemed to stop. Their eyes met, and in that single moment, years of pain, anger, love, and regret crashed together. Denise's hand tightened around the bedsheet. Marcus, she said, her voice barely above a breath. I'm so sorry, he replied. It wasn't polished. It wasn't rehearsed. It was broken and honest. Amara watched from the corner, feeling like a child again, small and unsure. She saw her mother's eyes fill with tears, not of joy, but of memories. long nights alone. Missed birthdays. Questions Amara had asked that Denise never fully answered. I didn't come to disrupt your life, Marcus said quietly. I came because I finally understand what I lost. Denise closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, the anger was still there, but so was exhaustion. You don't get forgiveness just because you showed up, she said. But, my daughter needed help. And you helped. That was the truth hanging between them. Recovery was not easy. Denise had good days and bad days. Some mornings she laughed. Other nights she cried from pain and fear. Amara stayed by her side, doing homework in the hospital room, humming softly when the nights felt too long. Marcus visited often, never overstaying, never pushing. Sometimes he brought flowers. Sometimes just coffee and silence. Slowly, Amara began to see the change in him. He listened more than he spoke. He asked permission before sitting close. When he looked at her, it wasn't with pride or ownership, but with awe, like he couldn't believe she was real. One evening, as rain tapped against the window, Marcus finally asked, "Can I hear you sing again?" Amara hesitated. Singing had always been safe when it was just her and her mother. Now it felt exposed. But she nodded. She sang softly, a simple melody without music. The room felt warmer somehow. Denise smiled through tears. Marcus covered his face, shoulders shaking. For the first time, Amara saw him not as a judge or a stranger, but as a man full of regret, trying to rebuild something fragile. I don't know what we're supposed to be, Amara said when the song ended. But I won't pretend none of this hurt. Marcus nodded. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. Weeks passed. Denise grew stronger. Amara returned to school, no longer invisible. Teachers praised her courage. Students who once whispered now smiled. But the biggest change was inside her. She had learned that her voice mattered, not just on a stage, but in life. On the day Denise was discharged, they stepped outside into the sunlight together. Amara stood between her mother and Marcus, unsure of the shape of their future, but no longer afraid of it. Chapter 2 of her life had begun. Not with perfection, but with truth. And the courage to keep singing, even when the song was hard.